life. Good afternoon, fancy meat computers. How are ya? It's a snowy day in River City. Boop. So we don't really have any announcements to go through or anything. Assignment 1 is due at the end of this week. Oh, I'm doing well, thank you. So if you haven't been working on assignment 1 already, then you are now to the point in the course where I expect that you should be able to do assignment 1. Yeah. It's nice snow, though. Not too much, just enough to be pretty. Yeah, it's, I want to say something like everybody was sufficiently traumatized by 1 week ago that, this is quite nice in comparison. I feel like if this was, like, the only snow that you'd gotten all winter, then you'd be like, ugh, look at all this shoveling you have to do. But, yeah, it really makes a difference when you can, it really makes a difference when you can just, scrape the shovel along the sidewalk for quite a stretch before having to empty the shovel, as opposed to what it was last week, where, like, you had to take several scoops out of each spot just to get down to the ground, and then you could get it off the ground, Depends on how big your shovel is, I guess. I'm personally a big fan of the big scoop style shovel, or sometimes known as a sled shovel. There are some jobs that you just can't beat this guy for. Something like this. Like, if you're good, you can get, like, this thing loaded up to, like, hereabouts if you're cutting a bank or something. Hi, it's Ryan, lol. Oh, hi, Ryan. You just want more clips. That's what you want. Yeah. Anyway, highly recommend this type of shovel if you don't have one, especially for the types of snow dumps that we got last time. The advantage of a shovel like this is that you can scoop, like, a consistent area regardless how deep the snow is. How do you get to see your marks for assignment 1? Do you have to wait till the due date? Yes. So this is going to be the procedure. You have until Sunday midnight. At that point, people, like, if you're not familiar with how the MSAFs work, the MSAFs are normally they're a 3-day extension, but now they're a 5-day extension. So we actually have to wait until we get all of the assignments submitted, and then we mark them all, and then we publish the grades. But, yeah. Until you hit a chunk of ice and it runs right into your stomach. Yes, that's true. That's the one thing. But, that's okay. We've got tough stomachs, right? But, yeah. So, that'll be... The marks will be made available after the date. Just because of the system that we're using, the Jupyter system, it's not really possible to, like, give you your mark at the time. We're working on a new system that we might be able to, deploy in some future semester. But, yeah. Haha. Be careful or you will have yourself a meme magic part 3, lol. Oh, that would be amazing. When classes become in person from July 31st, do we still have access to classes on YouTube as well, like now? Yeah, so my my intention for when classes go back to being in person is to have all of the lectures video recorded, and to upload them to the YouTubes so that everything is all in the same place and you can get access to the lectures after the fact. Yeah, so yeah, you'll be able to get access to the lectures after we go back. If no one MSAFs, do we still have to wait 5 days? Yes, actually, because you can submit an MSAF up to 5 days after now, up to 5 days after the thing that was due. So we don't actually know if there were any MSAFs until the MSAF deadline, like the MSAF extended deadline has passed. So yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of just how it works. Is it okay if we upload A1 to Avenue to Learn as a .ipynb file? Yes, that is the preferred format. Okay. Couple of pointers on assignment submission. Just quickly, since, people are going to be working on it. Number 1, please do not submit your work in the form of a Python source code file. That is to say, something like .py, right? Please, 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 take the .ipynb file, right? Make your changes, enter your code inside of a Jupyter environment, and if you're submitting manually, submit the .ipynb file. It is important to the auto-grading process that the answers be sort of inside of the notebook environment, and if you don't submit it that way, for the first 1 or 2 times the first time you submit it that way, i.e. not in the correct way, we'll probably fix it for you, even though it's work, and we'll say, don't do this again, or we'll start docking marks for this. And the next time we'll start docking marks for it. And that's how that goes. Yeah, so it's real easy. Just download the file, put your changes in the file, re-upload the same file. Another thing, do not change the file name of the notebook file, please. You do not, _not, have to include your Mac ID or your student number or any kind of identifying information anywhere in the document, actually, but most particularly, do not include any of that in the file name. It turns out that if you do, what happens is the autograder can't find your file because it has an unexpected file name, so don't change the file names either, please. It's just a pain in the butt. Also, if you submit your assignment and you get a 0 for that assignment when the marks go back, please let us know, because there was probably something that went wrong with the process that we can totally fix, but we do need you guys to keep an eye on your grades and make sure that you're getting your grades as appropriately. Okay? Let's see. We just submit through Jupyter JHub by pressing the submit button, correct? Correct, yeah. If you look at the page where you fetch the Jupyter notebook, there'll be a thing to submit it there as well. Please be aware that the Jupyter system does not count intermediate saves as submissions. You must submit in order for the submission to count. So just because you fill it out on the server doesn't mean that it has been submitted. You have to manually submit the notebook file. All right? Just because it says saved doesn't mean submitted. Okay? Sir, I don't understand. Why would we get a 0? Well, take, for example, a case where a person does modify the file name of the notebook. Let's say they put their student number in there. The auto-grading software will not be able to find it because it has an unexpected file name. As such, there will be no file for it to grade that it knows of, which means you'll get a 0. Now, obviously, this can be easily fixed if we just rename your file to the proper name for you. But, you know, it's up to you guys to determine that you're getting all of the marks that you need. Okay? Will it take the most recent submission because I accidentally pressed submit before even opening it? Yeah, it'll take the most recent submission. For sure, for sure, for sure. In general, it's Price is Right rules. Closest to without going over the deadline. But please just don't submit after the deadline. It's just a pain in the butt. So if we submit the assignment on JHub, we don't need to submit anything on Avenue, correct? Just making sure. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. If you have submitted on either Jupyter Hub or Avenue, you do not need to submit in the other location. The idea is these are parallel avenues for submission, not, like, what's the opposite of parallel? Perpendicular? That doesn't even make sense in this context. You're supposed to do one or the other, not both. Ideally, one of the two. Yeah. Guys, I took this course last term with Ryan. Make sure you don't change the name of the notebook file, because that will also get you a 0. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Although, if you do get a 0 for a reason like that, again, email us, and we'll sort it out so that, you know, the penalty isn't quite so harsh. Yeah? Are the recorded in-person lectures live on YouTube as well? Well, they can't be live and recorded at the same time. That's a contradiction in terms. Series. Oh! Yes. Parallel and series, like electronic circuits. Yes. Yeah, so this is parallel submission, not serial submission. But yeah. So yeah, no, if they have been recorded in the lecture theater, they will be uploaded as videos, not as live streams. If for some reason I have to, like, be home because I'm isolating or whatever, you know, it will be back to a live stream format. You know, we'll just kind of flip-flop between the two, depending on how healthy I am. Will the in-person tutorials also be recorded? No, but that's the purpose of the online tutorial. We will continue to do the extra online session through the semester, and that section will continue to be recorded, though in-person tutorials will not. Yeah. Good. Hi, Sarth. Good. Well, if that's all that out of the way, then I think we might as well get started with our lecture today, eh? Good, good. So, our tutorials in person this week. No, all in-person classes for first-year classes begin next week. This week is still an online week. At least, unless I've lost a week in my brain. No. Next week is the beginning of the first not online week in a while. So, there we go. If you didn't already know this, Sarthak is a TA for the course. That's why he's got the little wrench by his name. I make the TAs mods so that you guys can sort of know who and why they are. See you, Ryan. Okay. last semester, Ryan made a couple of meme videos, which you can find on the Pointless Nonsense playlist on my YouTube channel, I think. Anyway, let's talk about variables. So we were talking about expressions last time. And let me just pull up my Python terminal. So there is a very, very important difference in programming between single and double equal sign. This is something that holds true for most programming languages. And this sort of gives you an indication of the precision that it takes in order to write a program. One of the things that is... Sir, can I record this live stream to watch it later? It's already being recorded. Once this live stream is finished, it will be available on my YouTube channel as a video in perpetuity. So you can watch it afterwards. Absolutely. So if we have a variable x equals 5, that assigns the value 5 to the variable x, as we discussed last time. If you have x double equals something, you get a Boolean result. This is a data type that we haven't really talked about in depth yet, but Booleans are really easy to understand. They're just true or false values. So I have this variable x. It has been assigned the value 5. Here, with double equals, I'm saying, is x equal to 6? False. Is x equal to 5? True. So that's the difference between single and double equals. It is a common programming error to use a single equals inside of an if statement or a loop or some other type of conditional command. It's a common error to use a single equals when you meant a double equals. So please just watch out for that. That's a common beginner trap. So, good. We've also got a thing called multiple assignment. So, a common sort of example to demonstrate how memory works is the how do you swap the values of two variables, right? So if we have x with a value of 5 and we have y with a value of 10, gotta put an equal sign in there. So x is 5 and y is 10. What if we wanted y to have x's value and x to have y's value? Well, we might do something like this. X equals y equals x. Now, when we take a look at these values, we'll see x has the value 10, as we expected, but y doesn't have the value 5. What has gone on is that during this step, we have overwritten the old value of x. This 5 gets blown into space dust. It doesn't exist anymore. So, in order to swap the variables and not delete the thing that you're trying to swap to the other memory location, you have to introduce a temporary variable. The temporary variable holds on to that value so it doesn't get deleted when you perform the swap operation. So, in this case, you would say temp is equal to x is equal to y is equal to temp. Then, x is 10, but y is 5. Make sense? The important thing to note about that, with respect to, like, how does this apply to programming, like, from a conceptual level, it's very, very important to think of each one of these statements as being its own separate and distinct memory operation that is executed in sequence. See, if both of these guys were executed at the same time, that would be a swap. But because this is a sequential series of operations, you require the temporary variable. Now, Python does provide you a way to get around this. You can say xy is equal to yx. And you can see that swaps the positions. However, this business of double assignment is, well, it's essentially just a little syntactic trick, right? The temporary memory location is still being used in this case. It's just being used behind the curtains. It's being used under the hood. You're not actually being told that it's being used, and, you know, in some cases that'll be useful, because then you don't have to really think about it, and that can improve your programming speed. But it's also, like, especially when you're learning how programming languages work, it's important to learn how it's, you know, how it's actually doing the things it's doing. Good. So, question. Why would we need to use a swap instead of just assignment variables in the beginning correctly? Well, swapping operations have a few applications. Most, like the easiest one to understand is sorting algorithms. We're not really going to get into sorting algorithms to a huge amount right now, and it's kind of like a little bit out of the depth that we're currently at, but there's an algorithm called bubble sort, which is kind of the easiest, it's the easiest to understand sorting algorithm, right? So, first of all, what is a sorting algorithm? A sorting algorithm operates on an array of numbers, or a list of numbers, that are in randomized order, and it puts them into ascending or descending order. So if we take a look, the way that bubble sort works is it basically examines the numbers in the array one at a time, and just performs a sequence of swaps over them. Like the problem, like the essence of the sorting problem is that you can't actually know, like, this should have that position at the end, right? You need an algorithm to do it. So, you know, the reason they call it bubble sort is that the high numbers kind of bubble up through the algorithm as it proceeds. So in this case, purple was the highest number. So by the time you've performed every swap that you can, purple will have achieved the highest point in the resulting array. But you can see each one of these swap operations is a swap operation in the exact same manner as I've demonstrated here. So, yeah, swapping is pretty useful. It's less useful when the things that you're swapping are like arbitrary variables. In that case, Richard, you do have a point. Why wouldn't we just, you know, set them up correctly the first time? But when the position in memory is important, swapping it becomes a very useful thing to know how to do. So, naming variables. Try to use variable names that help you remember what role that object plays in your code. We kind of already touched on this with the triangle example, but if you have 3.14159, you might as well name that pi. You know, basically, if you relabel the variables here to have, you know, actual words instead of just A, B, and C, you can see that this is actually an attempt to calculate the area of a circle, rather than just, you know, some miscellaneous calculation. So it's always good to use all the keys on your keyboard, basically. So, good. Comments. So comments are actually a really useful thing. Will we lose marks if our variable names aren't convenient. No, you're not going to lose any marks for stylistic points in this class. In general, we're not marking for style, we're marking for functionality. So, what the critical point for the marking of assignments is here is if we give your function x input, do we get y expected output, right? So it's like we're marking you basically on a purely input-output basis. Are the assignments graded on an if it works basis? Yes. That's another way to put it, yeah. So, comments. Comments are, like, highly, highly useful. Let me just pull up. Yeah. This is fall. I want winter. Topic 1, sure, why not? So you can see, so comments are useful for a number of things. I've got some comments in here right now, in fact. But what a comment is it's basically you put a symbol at the beginning of the line, and anything you write on that line is not included in the program. So this is not included in the program. So essentially, there are two main purposes of comments, right? There's the documentation purpose, right? So it's considered good programming practice at the beginning of each function that, well, each function that isn't trivial, or most functions, to put a couple of lines of comment at the beginning of the function to describe what that function is doing. So this would be find the x-intersect of a function f on the interval a, b within tolerance eps. Assumes f is monotonically increasing inside AB. So there you go. Quick little short little description of the code. Now, I will warrant, you know, it's been a couple of weeks actually since we put this down, right? I'm willing to bet that a few of you had to look at this and like think about it to remember what this piece of code was actually bloody doing. Now you don't have to think about the code to know what it was doing. You just have to read the comment. Comments can also be very useful when you're designing an algorithm. You know, when I'm doing an algorithm, I'll often use comments like in the following manner. You know, if I have, you know, def sort L, just, you know, to sort a list, it's like, you know, find the maximum element put it at the end of the list, repeat. Like, you can put the steps of the algorithm in comments inside of the algorithm as well. And this, like, you would do this, and then you would have some code that would find the maximum element, then you'd do that there, and then, you know, repeat would mean you'd just basically wrap the whole thing in a loop. But, you know, you can use comments to guide the manner in which you develop an algorithm. Do you need to write comments for assignments or the exam? Again, we're not really marking for use for stylistic purposes. I have been known to test this. You can actually, there are certain types of comments that you can actually, you can test with an autograder, and I have been known to throw a question like that in every once in a while, but it would be in the vein of, this is a question where I expect you to write some comments, and you're going to be marked on the comments you write, and then, if I'm giving you points for comments, that's going to be explicit in the question, basically is what I'm trying to say. So that's another very good use of comments. A third one is you can actually use comments to toggle whether or not pieces of code are actually being used in your final, program. So, like these guys, you can kind of turn them on and off by toggling the comment, by just including or deleting the comment character. That's actually very, very useful. You can have all kinds of print statements all through an algorithm, and just comment out only comment in only those ones that are sort of relevant to the part that you're testing. That's actually a really useful technique. So yeah, so comments. There you go. The symbol that you use for commenting in Python, it's not hashtag. The name of the symbol is octothorpe. So yeah, that's octothorpe, not hashtag. Good source code includes lots of comments to help the reader understand the code, but it's also possible to overdo it, right? Like if there's one line of code for every 10 lines of comment, you're probably putting in too much comment. Like the rules of writing good comments are basically the same as the rules of any good writing, right? Don't waste the reader's time, right? Present only that information which is relevant, only that information which is factual, and only that information which is important, right? So, clarity, brevity, wit. And that's the essence of good writing. And you can write them in Shakespearean verse if you really want to. Yeah. So if we were to comment our previous example to calculate the area of a rectangle, I would say that these two comments are actually kind of redundant given the way that the thing's been named. I would just personally keep the top one, but it's an example of how you can do comments. It's also a good example of the fact that you can put a comment at any point in the line, actually, and it will comment the rest of the line. So if you wanted to, comment out the divide 2, you could totally do that. And if you wanted to include a comment after a line of code, you can totally do that as well. Comments are super useful. I used comments in my assignment like notes to myself to help me understand what's going on. Should I delete them if the purpose of the comments is to help the reader? No. So, in general, no. You should err on the side of more comments rather than less, generally speaking. First of all, it has absolutely and precisely no effect whatsoever on the actual running of the program itself, because the comments are automatically removed by the Python interpreter. They aren't they don't ever get anywhere close to being run, so you don't have to worry about having more comments causing your code to run slowly or anything like that. It's better to err on the side of more comments rather than less, right? You can overdo it, but more is better than less in general. Yeah. I have a joke about that I'm trying to remember. Yeah, there you go. So, documentation, software documentation is like sex. Even if it's bad, it's better than having none at all. So let's talk about Booleans. We've talked a big game about Booleans. So Boolean is another data type, so it occupies the same category of objects as integers or floats. I'm glad you guys like that. So Booleans only have two possible values, true and false. The most interesting thing, like that in and of itself shouldn't be shocking, right? The reason they're called Boolean is because of some guy who was named Boole, who was a statistician, I think. I don't know. Anyway, the interesting thing about Booleans is how you can also perform operations on them. So if we have two Boolean values, say p is equal to true and q is equal to false, we can perform like a number of comparison operations. Well, we can perform Boolean operations on Boolean values to get different Boolean values. And I just realized that my slide is actually comparison operations, like the next one. Do we have... Okay. Where's the Boolean operations? Did I put them? Yeah, they're right at the end. Okay. Well, I'll give you a taster anyway. So this is how logic works. And this is actually derived from like formal logic. So P and Q is false. P and P is true. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change these so they're slightly less confusing. We'll call it T and F. There we go. So T and T is true. T and F is false. F and F is false. F and F is false. So both conditions have to be true in order for the thing to come out true. So for example, 10 is greater than 4 and 8 is less than 12. True. You also have the OR operator. So OR is true if either one of the two conditions comes out true. So is it true that 10 is greater than 4 or 8 is less than 12? Yes, because at least one of those two came out true. What if this one, what if one of these was false? Still comes out true. What if both of them are false? Then it comes out false, right? Good. So, you also have not. So, not T is false, not true is false, and not false is true, obviously. And that should round it out for now. There's also exclusive OR, but it's not really used very much. And it's not really important to you at this point in time. So you also have the comparators, right? And I'm using comparators here. I'm using less than and greater than. You also have less than equals and greater than equals. So that's kind of inclusive of the case where the two are equal. So 10 greater than or equal to 10 is true, but 10 greater than 10 is false, right? Is there is. Yeah. Is double equals. Yeah. So if you're trying to say x is y or is x y, right? That means that you're testing equality, right? You can also test for inequality. So 10 not equals 10 is false. And you can put a not in front as well, and that has the same effect. Is not F and T true or false? Not f and t is true. So f is false. Well, so this guy evaluates to false, and not false is true. So there you go. But I guess the other question is, what about without the parentheses? Which I believe would apply the not to the false first, and then and that with t, which it would still turn out to be true. But there you go. Yeah, so there you go. Basic comparators. It's kind of interesting, but like, what we're doing right now is we're giving you all kinds of building blocks, right? Like, one of the things that, like, one of the reasons that these intro lectures are so fundamental to computing, and the makes me glad I still have 100 people coming to lecture. These operations will not substantially change for the entire duration of your career as a programmer. Like, these are things that you absolutely have to know, and if you don't know it, you're going to find it more difficult to program by a long shot. But yeah, once you understand how to use Booleans, that's a skill that, like, supports you basically for whenever you program, you'll need this skill. So yeah, good. So, be careful about equality versus equals sign. I did that as well, but, you know, it bears repeating. Double equal sign is a test for equality. Single equal sign is assignment. If you confuse the two, Python, I think, will actually complain at you. So let's say if x is equal to 6. Yeah, invalid syntax. So in Python, it'll just give you a compiler warning, and it'll give you an error, and that'll be the end of it. You don't have, like, it'll catch it at that level. In a programming language like C, however, the if statement will just perform assignment inside of an if statement. And you won't, like, you can run into pretty nasty bugs by not realizing that you used single instead of a double equal sign. I feel like the latency is bad today. Is the latency bad today? So in the chat, when I clap my hands, could you, like, put a clap emoji in the chat? I want to see what the latency is, okay? Ready? Thank you. 2, 6. Yeah, 10. Okay. Ten seconds actually isn't bad. Cool, thank you. So let's talk about functions. Functions are going to be a thing that you absolutely have to know for the assignment as well. So the reason that you have to know how to do functions this early in the class is, you know, for the absolute first assignment, is it's the abstraction mechanism that allows your code to be called anywhere, right? So what you do when you write a function is you take a group of statements, you package them together, give them a name, and then you can use that packaged sub-program anywhere and as many times as you like elsewhere in the program. And the way the autograder works is it takes your functions and it runs them to see if they work or not. So, in terms of mathematical analogy, they're fairly similar to how cosine, exponentiation, logarithm all work. You give them an input and they produce an output. The syntax for functions is as follows. And you'll have seen me use a couple of them already. These are functions, for instance. So in Python, all functions start with the def keyword. This is a keyword similar to while. Defines a function. What's the difference between a class and a function? A class may contain many functions, but a function cannot contain a class, I think. It might be able to in Python, but classes are like one level up in terms of abstraction from a function. It's like functions package together many statements. Classes package together many functions. Oh, wow. That is quite some latency there, Julia. Wow. Good lord. You know, like, half of you did, like, the hand-washing emoji rather than the clap emoji, right? Anyway. So, you then have the name of the function, right? Which is something you get to specify when you're regularly programming. For our assignments, you have to use the function names we give you, or else the autograder doesn't know what name you used, so it won't mark you anything. People actually tend to lose a lot of marks on that by either renaming the function or modifying the list of inputs. So please, basically, most of the, pretty much all of the assignments or whatever that you get will have the first line of every function done for you. Please do not modify it, unless expressly told to do so. So after that, you have the list of arguments. You then have the colon, and you have the body of the function. Typically, on the last line of the function, you have a return statement. The return statement specifies what the output of the function should be. So you drop into the return statement whatever whatever variable you're keeping your final result in. That's what you put in the return statement. Can you modify the return line? Yes, absolutely. The return line often will not be provided to you, so yeah, you're going to have to design the return statement yourself. Most of the time. So when we say body of the function, we just mean like if statements and while loops and assignment statements and all of those fun things that we've been learning so far. Good. It is possible to have a function with 0 arguments. You just leave empty braces, but all of the functions that we are going to give you are going to require inputs. So, good. So here's another example. Oh, there was one question that asked us to compute a single value but had like 7 hidden test cases. What could they possibly be? You know, just running it with various values. Most of the time you're going to be asked to compute a single value. We'll get, actually, when we talk about topic 6, which is on the subject of testing, we're going to get into quite a lot of detail about how test cases are designed. And in fact, the test cases that we use on your code to determine whether or not it's any good are actually designed with the same methodology that is being presented in class. So that's kind of cool. But yeah. Anyway, it's now 15:19. 5:19. I'd be starting my next class, jeez. Anyway, class is like now done. If you have any questions, please ask those questions. Otherwise, have a great rest of your Monday. For one of the questions on A1, I had to change the name of a variable because the def and one of the parameters were the same name, so it gave me int object is not callable. Is that okay? That I don't think that should happen. That should not, like, Okay, so two things. Generally speaking, changing the names of arguments is usually okay, but again, not necessarily recommended. Changing the name of the function is absolutely prohibited. I would highly and strongly recommend re-downloading the like getting a fresh copy of the assignment and taking a look at it, because I will eat my shirt if we distributed a function that was broken like that in its prototype. That's what you call the first line of a function, prototype. I mean the one... Yeah. For if statements, do we always use double equals rather than single equals? Generally, yes. Yeah. Always use double equals and never single equals. The trick is, like, it gets a little bit hairy when you do it the other direction, right? So, like, just because Python is Python, I could totally say, like, x double equals y here, and it would basically not do anything, but if I expected that to do something, that would be a problem. Yeah. Yeah, that should probably be fine. Yeah, verification of your algorithm by running the calculation yourself and seeing if you get the same result is a fantastic way to generate new test cases. My Jupyter Hub fails to launch. It says, spawn failed. How can I resolve this issue? Please get in contact with either Sarthak or Mark, and they will be happy to help you with that problem. I was just wondering why there are so many hidden test cases for that one. Like, what else could they possibly test except for those specific values given in the question? Oh, you can test the entire range of the data type, right? So, like, if you have a, you know, if you have a function like, you know, let's say I was testing the max function, right? Like, you could test it with that number, you could test it with that number, you could test it with two of the same number, you could test it with nothing, you know? You can test it with, like, the number of inputs that you can find for a function are absolutely limitless. Generally speaking, the way that we generate our expected answers is that we have an instructor's version of the algorithm, which we don't generally publish, from which we can generate the expected result from any given input. So, yeah. Are there chances for part marks on the assignments, or is it all or nothing? There are definitely chances for part marks. Any test case that you pass, you get marks for. Any of the hidden test cases that you pass, you get marks for. Visible test cases, you don't get any marks for passing them. So for every hidden test case that you pass, it'll be worth like 1 or a half mark, and that's how you get your marks. So if you pass like 3 out of 7 of the test cases, you'll get 3 out of 7 marks. Are you marked for commenting? No. No, you're not. I'm sorry, I meant it asked us to calculate a specific input for the function. And had a bunch of test cases. Yeah. Yeah. Generally speaking, don't worry about the hidden test cases. Julia's like... Julia has the slowest response time. But that's okay. Might be rural. Julia might be out in the country somewhere. Okay. Good. All right, take her easy, folks, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Ciao.